You want to break behavioral patterns and cycles that you're sick of? That's noble, and I'm here for it. But you've got to know why you're drawn into those patterns and cycles if you have any hope of breaking that endless loop of suffering that you're in. And that's just what we're talking about today. Thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. That's the loop of suffering. Self-awareness is the key to making any lasting changes in this loop. And if you're here today because you've finally come to some awareness about your particular behaviors that are causing you distress, well done. That's a big piece. Together, we're going to work our way backwards to have more awareness around the non-conscious thoughts or the unconscious motivator that triggered the emotion that was present just before you engaged in that behavior that you're dreading so much, so that you can choose a different kind of loop going forward, one that doesn't keep you in your suffering. As humans, we share a lot of the same day-to-day behaviors, but what causes us distress and motivates us to engage in those unhealthy behaviors can vary quite drastically. And while we're going to spend the bulk of today differentiating between the motives and the loops that they trigger, stick around until the end of the video to find out what the common denominator is, no matter how different we might look. Whether this is your first time hearing about the unconscious motivators or you're well versed in this, you're going to have your own unique reactions to the motivators. There's no doubt about that. Some of them you're going to resonate with in that they make good sense to you, practically speaking. Some of them you're going to be completely baffled by, like, how is anyone actually functioning this way? What I'm hoping, what any teacher or true student of the Enneagram is hoping, is two things. One, that you'll walk away with more understanding, empathy, or compassion for all of the different types, including your own. And that you'll walk away with the knowledge that other people's behaviors and reactions are not personal. That though they may be behaving and reacting to other people and their environments, everything is being funneled or filtered through their unconscious motivator that's telling them how they need to be or show up in this world in order to survive it. Now watch this. This is the loop that we all get stuck in. As our little personalities are starting to develop, we experience a fear, whether it's a perceived or actual threat to our existence or our supply of love. Our unconscious motivator starts to lock in and take root as our belief system, telling us how we need to be or show up in the world to survive it. So our unconscious motivator and our accompanying fear go hand in hand. And each time the fear gets triggered, whether we feel a 1 out of 10 kind of fear or a 10 out of 10 level of fear, with it comes the core emotion of our type, which is really just working to reinforce our unconscious motivator. So we dig our heels in deeper to the behavior that we believe is going to alleviate the fear. So what does this look like? An experience creates a fear, a threat to our survival or not getting our needs met, for example, love. Thoughts tell us how we need to be to survive or get those needs met, thus our unconscious motivator. But that unconscious motivator is typically an unhealthy belief system, and accompanying an unhealthy belief system are the core emotions of each type. When that emotion gets triggered, we behave in a way that our unconscious motivator tells us will alleviate both the fear and the emotion. But really, this is just the holding pattern. Thoughts, feelings, and behaviors all run in a continuous cycle to create our experience of suffering. You might call it your crazy, you might call it your exhaustion, and I hear this one a lot, your confusion. So let's take our time looking at each of the different loops of suffering. Pardon my enthusiasm for visuals. Here we go. The 8's unconscious motivator is to mask vulnerability or weakness by appearing strong and powerful. They see a world that takes advantage of weak, vulnerable individuals and refuse to be that. Their tough exterior, their directness, and intensity is all in a response to their unconscious motivator that's driving them to present themselves this way so that the vulnerability or weakness that they see or feel in themselves is less or not obvious to others. So you're actually already hearing what 8's fear, and that's weakness. And what happens is when they become aware of their own weakness or vulnerability, their core emotion gets triggered, which is anger. And 8's externalize it. So you can end up seeing these abrupt, assertive, sometimes even aggressive behaviors that are all in an effort to fend off their own experience of vulnerability and anger. 9's are motivated by the need to keep peace and harmony by avoiding conflict at all costs. They've experienced a world of people with big, loud, demanding opinions that in one way or another left the 9 feeling alienated for having their own thoughts and feelings. So the 9's learned to merge with others in order to survive. And although 9's are the second type to share the core emotion of anger, 9's generally go to sleep to their emotions. So by keeping the peace, by going along with everyone else's feelings, needs, and desires, 9's don't actually have to feel. The behaviors driven by the unconscious motivator allow nines to feel like they're part of something, included, basically anything but separate. And this pacifies their fear of separateness and allows them to avoid confronting the real anger they've experienced as a result of not being allowed to be their own person. For ones, we're motivated or feel compelled to improve ourselves, others, and the world around us. One of our first most impactful experiences was witnessing good be rewarded and bad being punished. So we exist in this world striving to be good, which tells you that our fear is of being bad. So these high standards, rigid moral compasses, black and white thinking, and need to be appropriate, sometimes to the degree of being perfect, is all done in an effort to avoid feeling like we are bad. And since ones internalize the core emotion, resentment rears its head toward ourselves for not being better, doing the right thing, etc. A one's unconscious motivator falsely tells us that if we're constantly being perfect, we must not be bad, and that will alleviate or compose our anger. The two's unconscious motivator is the need to be needed, appreciated, and loved, simultaneously denying their own needs. Part of the two's belief system, in fact, this is true for twos, threes, and fours, is that they cannot be loved for who they truly are. So if they can make you and others like them, then their needs will be met and they'll survive this world. When you see their thoughtful, generous ways of showing up to meet everyone else's needs, what you're actually witnessing is the two's attempt to project an image of themselves to earn the affection of others. Underneath is their core emotion of shame. Twos are so afraid of the idea that they're unworthy individuals, they scramble to be friendly, kind, and useful to skirt this shame and fear. Threes are motivated by the need to appear successful and avoid failure at all costs. Like twos, they're projecting a particular image of themselves, believing that success is the only thing that matters. They see a world that only values people for what they achieve, not for who they are. So of course, their biggest threat or fear is failure. So three's unconscious motivator keeps them really busy. They get caught in an endless loop of doing, chasing after those achievements that will maintain their status of success. They too feel shame as their core emotion, so in efforts to sidestep it and the threat of feeling like a failure, they stay on the go, trying to be who others admire. For fours, they're motivated or feel compelled to appear special and unique in order to compensate for what they feel is missing within them. This is a complex motivator in that little fours never really had the experience or feeling of fitting in. And like any human, they desperately want the feelings of belongingness, which is one of our most basic human needs. But at the same time, the compensation part of their motivator to appear special and unique drives their behaviors to also stand out, upholding their appearance of peculiar, offbeat, or unconventional. So we've got this push and pull situation going on with them. Their unconscious motivator feeds them conflicting thoughts, both triggering their core emotion of shame. So the four's behavior of pining, fantasizing, and idealizing their relationships and lives can vacillate between the desire of both belongingness and uniqueness in the hopes to assuage this fear and shame. If things are clicking for you and you're getting a better understanding of your particular loop of suffering, or you're feeling more empathy and compassion for how other types of people are just trying to survive this world too, please take a second to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. And then on to the fear triad. The five's unconscious motivator is to gain knowledge and conserve their energies in order to be self-reliant. Fives saw a world that showed them that they could not rely on others, so they adopted this belief that they alone would need to be competent. The core emotion of their type is fear, which makes a lot of sense if you think about a young child or toddler learning that they had to meet their own needs. So fives immerse themselves in information, data, and environments where they can isolate and avoid being depleted by others to help mitigate their fear of being incompetent and the layered core emotion of fear. Sixes are motivated by the need to feel safe and secure. They see a world of impending doom and constant threats. Wanting desperately to navigate these things, the biggest threat or fear for sixes is uncertainty, which is indicative of their experiences early on in life where the people or events around them were likely unpredictable. Like fives, they share the core emotion of fear, but sixes experience it more as intense anxiety. And you can see this in their 50 questions, their what-ifs, their hypothetical scenarios that are often done in rapid fire, indicating their own internal sense of urgency to soothe or ease their own uncertainty and anxiety. For 7s, they feel motivated or compelled to avoid psychological and emotional pain by imagining or engaging in a future filled with unlimited possibilities. 7s fear they will always be unfulfilled, and so all of their adventurous behaviors seek to fill them up with fun, pleasurable experiences because unfulfilled is emotionally and psychologically painful. Their core emotion is fear, and can you blame them, since in their early years, 7s didn't have the support system that they needed to navigate the painful human emotions. And without their own reference systems or tools at the time to know what to do for themselves, 7s had no idea that these emotions wouldn't last forever. They felt large and all-consuming, and so 7s found a way to lighten these feelings as best they could, and like all of us, got caught in the loop we've been talking about and wound up as adults in these patterns where we are suffering as victims of our own belief systems. Those are the loops, and with that knowledge, you can start to pattern interrupt not just the behaviors, but the actual thought patterns themselves, because you have more awareness of when they're happening and where it's stemming from, your unconscious motivator. That changes everything going forward when your feelings shift, and now you're making better decisions, healthier decisions, keep in mind, in your behaviors. Right there, you have the ability to start putting an end to your own suffering. Okay, so sit tight for a second. We just outlined the 9 different motivators and the loops of suffering that they wind up in, but what I really want to stress here are the common denominators amongst all of them. Each personality type and loop of suffering that we've been looking at today are variations of 2 things: safety and love. That's what we're all trying to achieve when we engage in these loops. So knowing your own unconscious motivator, can you have more compassion and empathy and patience for yourself as you're trying to make healthy changes to your own belief systems, feelings, and behaviors? Can you observe others' intents as similar to your own, though the behaviors might look different, maybe less appealing or acceptable to you? Can you observe their intent and experience empathy for them, knowing that they want exactly what you want in life, to feel safe and loved?